Okay, so the next thing we'll move to is the Resiliency Project presentation. Gail, I guess you're on again.
So actually, that will be Monica Steele, and Public
Oh,
Works
okay.
staff will be leading that.
Okay. Could we please have Monica on board?
Yep. Just give her a moment. I just transferred her and made her the presenter, so she needs to get her screen set up.
Okay.
And I apologize because I'm just not very good at this whole screen share thing.
That's all right. We're all learning.
Yeah, but you'd think I'd get it by now. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Can you still see it? No, because I moved it. All right. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna try and, I apologize because I'm gonna show you the side of my head while I try to present this to you because I shared the screen that doesn't have my camera on it. So I want to thank all of you, and I'm not sure how many of you have heard about the Public Works Resiliency project that we are working on, but this is an ongoing project, and I'm just going to start with kind of giving you a little history on it. So the county has a responsibility should a natural disaster occur, and we play a critical role in that, whether it's countywide emergency preparedness, response, and/or recovery. And so the county is responsible for protecting and preserving the life and property, as well as coordinating the longer-term efforts of rebuilding and recovery. So there's several county departments that play an essential role in all of this, and those departments include assessment and tax, emergency management, community development, public health, and public works, and the sheriff's office. And so conversations surrounding resiliency and alternate routes started quite a while ago, but back in 2012, it was actually incorporated into our strategic plan, where it identified a project named Countywide Bypass Truck Evacuation Route, where the county, the cities of Astoria, Warrenton, and Seaside considered improvements that could be made to Highway 101 and the development of an alternate route should an earthquake or tsunami occur. We would have an evacuation road or bypass. So in the 2015 TSP, it was mentioned as having redundant transportation routes, increases the likelihood of maintaining system connectivity during and after such an event, is therefore an important part of Clatsop County's overall resilience. And so based on all of this information, the County Board of Commissioners have prioritized the relocation of essential buildings and infrastructure outside of the tsunami inundation zone in an effort to optimize response during our community's time of need. And one of those critical facilities is our Public Works facility. And currently our Public Works facility is located within the inundation zone. And so this map here, I apologize for because it's pretty small for all of you to see. You can go online and expand it and make it bigger. But what it is, it's kind of identifying where we currently are, where we're looking at possibly moving to, and where some of these alternate routes or recovery routes are located. And so if you look at this map, you will see the current facility. Sorry, I'm gonna try and scoot this out of the way. You will see that the current Public Works facility is located, there's a little tiny star up there where it says Astoria District Shop. And where we're looking to acquire property is that yellow square with the triangle in it that says Acquisition Phase 1. So that acquisition site is to some commonly known as the sort yard. as I'll talk to in a little bit, we did learn that what is common to some of us is not common to all of us. And so some of the terminology that we've used has confused people. And so I apologize to the public for that. But where the sort yard is located is out past Fort Clatsop, towards the on Fort Clatsop Road, headed towards Lewis and Clark Road. And so the county, that's our first phase of the project. And then other things that we're looking at are those alternate routes. And so the second phase that we're looking at is what is known as the south portion of the main line. And that is on the map circled in orange with the orange line highlighted. If you'll notice on that orange line that's highlighted, to the right of it is a black line, which is the current Lewis and Clark Road. And to the left, obviously, is Highway 101. And I apologize because I was in another meeting and they corrected me and I said, shouldn't say should, but when a natural event occurs, the Highway 101 is going to be unusable. And it is highly likely that Lewis and Clark Road will have significant landslides to make it unusable as well. And the point behind resiliency is having redundant routes. And so making sure that if you can't use one and you can't use another, that you at least have a third option, if not more. And that's where the main line came into play. So currently the county has what is called a purchase sale agreement for the sort yard. We entered into this agreement in July of 2020. And the county has 180 days to complete the due diligence process at no cost to the county. We also have what is called a letter of intent for phase 2. That one has a longer due diligence process for the south portion of the main line. And that one has a due diligence process of approximately 20 months. And so the due diligence period would end in December of 2021. So those are the only 2 agreements that we have in place at this time. And those are the only 2 that we're putting any efforts towards as far as doing more work to kind of figure out the feasibility of whether or not these projects are suitable. And so, So in regards to relocating the facility, since that's our primary focus at this point in time, there are several criteria that we're looking at to see if the site that we're looking at is a good option. And so one of those is obviously to be out of the inundation zone, but another piece of it is what land is available for us to even try to acquire. And then you'll see several others, the available public access, because something we need to remember about the public works facility is while oftentimes it's just a location where staff will congregate in the morning and then get the equipment that they need and then head out to the job site. There are also staff that provide public service and the public needs to be able to have easy access to them. And so preferably having the site in a centrally located for South County, North County, East County, etc. And then also just trying to make sure that the site is safe in regards to geological hazards. And then what other costs are associated with it. Some, as you are all aware, some of our vacant land has significant wetlands on it, and the cost to mitigate those wetlands is extremely expensive. And so just trying to figure out what the overall cost to develop to a turnkey site would be. So this slide here is for the sort yard, the proposed facility site. And this is a landslide susceptibility map. And so the site that we're looking at is approximately 50 acres. But there is landslide potential, but it is off from where we're looking to build the facility. And please do not ask the question as whether or not that's to scale. That was just me putting a block on there trying to show you where the general idea that we are looking to place the facility would be. In regards to the timeline, as I mentioned, we entered into a purchase and sale agreement on the sort yard. We entered into that in July, and the due diligence at the end of July, and the due diligence process ends at the end of January of 2021. We are currently working on the goal exception for that property, and then there's several other items that we're working on. We're having a phase 2 environmental assessment done. We are going to begin working on a traffic impact study, and then we're also doing some additional surveying. At this point in time, if the county, if the Board of Commissioners decide this is not the site for us, we walk away. It's no cost to the county other than the work that has been done, that we've paid for to try and address some of these due diligence questions. If we do decide that we need more time to address the due diligence process, we do have the option to extend for 2 90-day periods at a cost of $15,000 each. If we do move forward with the project, what we're looking at is having the project completely finished, which means all of our shops, all of our offices, everything would be out there by 2025. You'll see the second part of the project, phase 2 of the Mainline South. Again, that due diligence process is much longer, and we are proposing that construction would begin in 2024, but that's determined upon whether or not we actually, through this due diligence process, feel that there is a need to do any construction. One of the options that we're looking at is if the county were to acquire this property for a recovery route, can we just keep the gates locked and leave it as is, but have the land there? So in a natural disaster, we have that option to be able to reach the south portion of the county. One thing I would like to point out is we do have 2 other, besides our Astoria site, we do have 2 other substations, one out in Napa and one out in Jewell. So there is access to those parts of the county as well. So hopefully all of you received a questionnaire because we are trying to go through the public process to get input on whether or not countywide there is felt to be a need for this. And so so we sent out this questionnaire and we received approximately 2,650 questionnaires back. And in regards to the responses that we received, the first and foremost was, do you support moving the public works facility out of the tsunami inundation zone? And as you can see, 69% said yes. I will reiterate that this is when I have done other presentations or got feedback from the community. We did receive a lot of not sure questions, or not questions, but answers, because again, people weren't really sure of the locations that we were referring to when we referred to sort yard, pipeline, and north and south main line. So in the second question, do you think that Lewis and Clark sorting yard would be an appropriate location? We received 30% saying yes and 25% no, and again, the 46% not sure. In regards to how proactive the county should be in pursuing emergency and alternate routes in preparation for a seismic event, we had a 56% response rate saying very proactive, 30% saying somewhat proactive, 12% saying not proactive, and 2% saying not sure. Do you think that the county should acquire existing private roads for alternate or emergency routes if they are currently available? 66% said yes, 29% said no, and 5% said not sure. And if the county should acquire these alternate or emergency routes, should they be approved to county standards? 54% said yes, 19% said no, 17% said not applicable, and 10% said not sure. The question of if these alternate routes were obtained and improved, should they be open for general public access? 64% said yes, 28% said no, and 8% said not sure. And then we asked everybody to please rank the following potential projects in order of importance. The public works facility relocation, they 44% ranked that as being the top priority, with 25% saying that was a low priority and 20% saying not sure. Pipeline Road came up with 17% putting that as the highest priority, and 27% putting it as the lowest priority, and 29% saying not sure. In regards to the Lewis and Clark Mainline North section, which is approximately 2 miles long, 7% put that as 1, 15% put that as 4, being the least important, and 32% said not sure. And then again, for the Lewis and Clark Mainline South section, which is approximately 5 miles long, 8% put that as a top priority, where 25% put that as the least high, and 32% saying not sure. I did want to say, I skipped over it, but I did also want to say, when we were going through the process of identifying potential sites, we did look at 6 different sites. And again, I apologize because some of these are just kind of terms that we've kind of become familiar with, but we, many people said, why are you not considering the North Coast Business Park? One of the primary reasons there is it's always been the county's intention for not just the county, but as well as all the other applicable taxing districts, to get the North Coast Business Park back on the tax roll. That's where it's going to be the most benefit to the county. Additionally, as I mentioned previously, there's significant costs to mitigate wetlands, and in order to have the amount of land that the public works facility would need, we would be looking at approximately $1.5 to $2 million in just mitigation costs, where to acquire the property that we're currently looking at is we're in a purchase sale agreement for $900,000. So the cost to buy the property that we're looking at is less than the cost to just mitigate the wetlands on the North Coast Business Park property. Additionally, we need to be thinking about the traffic impacts. While we don't anticipate traffic impacts from the public works facility being significant, it is still not necessarily safe for heavy equipment to be trying to pull out in such a highly congested area such as the North Coast Business Park. Some other areas that have come up is Dolphin Avenue, which is where ODOT is currently located. People have asked, well, why don't you co-locate with ODOT? ODOT has outgrown their current facility and has asked about other sites that we might be able to co-locate with them that are larger, that we would be able to both fit at. There's another property, and let me see if I can go back to my slides. This one. So there's another property similar to where the Sort Yard is located, that is the Nicus property and the Angus property, and those are also both sites that we looked at. Both of those have since sold, so they are no longer an option. We also looked at Crown Camp, that is farther south. And while that does have a lot of potential to it, again, it's not necessarily the most convenient location as far as a central location for the public who needs to come in and have access to the offices. And so we have looked at other sites to try, and we continue to look at other sites to see what's going to be the most cost effective, as well as a good benefit to the public. And so going back to my last slide, we have been trying to keep the public up to date on what's going on. We started with our first virtual meeting back in August, on August 13th. We had approximately 60 people in attendance for that. We learned a lot from that in regards to community feedback. And so we have been, and since then and prior to that, we have regularly been receiving questions. So we've been trying to build our Resiliency Project website that can be found on the county website. And on there is a list of frequently asked questions. And so we encourage the public to go there because there have been a lot of great questions regarding this project. And we feel that we've answered them to the best of our ability. But if there's more questions, then we want to continue to look into these things. The board did have a work session on October 6th, at which point in time we were directed to continue with the due diligence process, to continue on with these two that we have agreements on to see what the outcomes of the due diligence process are. And then once that time frame comes to an end, we'll be going back before the board with more feedback from the community, as well as findings from the due diligence process to determine what the next steps for these projects are. And so that's the end of my presentation. And so I also have on the meeting is Public Works Director Ted McLean and County Engineer Dean Kernan. And so we are all here and happy to answer any questions you might have. And I'm gonna give you back my screen, Gail, maybe.
So does anybody have questions?
I had a couple of quick questions here. One relates to the map you showed of the sort yard with the landslide hazards mapped out. And there were kind of two main masses, one to the west and one to the south. And my question was, does that mapping of the hazard zone include the runout zone of a potential slide, or is that the mass of material that might move? And if it's just the mass that, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's my understanding that it's just the mass of material that might move. It's from the landslide susceptibility website through the state, I believe it was, but I can confirm that.
I was just curious then if anybody is able to make an estimate of what the runout of some of that slide material might be and whether it would impact the proposed location of the county facilities. So that's one question. The other I'll say is that I'm really impressed with how many people responded to the poll on the different options. That's really quite remarkable and very helpful, I think. And I think there's some real solid, definite consensus of what's important to do and how important it is to do. And those first questions were easy to understand and respond to. But I must say that the seventh question, where you ask people to order their priorities, got very muddled because some of the things seem to be interrelated. And so if you have a high priority for moving the county yard to the sort yard, you also want the road in good shape to and from there and to the rest of the county. So they kind of go together. And I think there may be some way to analyze that statistically to get at a result, but that aside, it's a good survey. And I just wonder with what I heard in that, I guess they were public comments at a county commissioners meeting where it seemed like anybody that had a little bit of apprehension about this plan had to do with increased traffic in their location, which is always going to be an issue. And I wondered if there are concrete numbers as to the typical numbers of trips of large trucks and other machinery that go in and out of the county yard in a day, and how much impact that would have on the local residents that live along the route. And the other thing that people were concerned about is they did feel like you focused on some certain known properties rather than doing a search based on 4 or 5 necessary elements that the property must have in order to meet it. And I'm also curious as to whether this property location, it looks very safe from tsunamis and some other things, but is it accessible to bring materials in and out of in an efficient way in times of disaster, but also in normal times? Are we putting it in a place where we're adding a whole bunch of cost to getting material in and out? So that's my questions, and you probably forgotten.
So I will comment in regards to the, there were a lot of concerns surrounding the neighborhood and the traffic impacts. So we will be conducting just a traffic impact study based on the traffic impacts out there. We do have counts, road counts, daily road counts, car counts for out there, but we will also be evaluating just kind of in and out of our own public works facility. I would let Public Works Director Ted McLean speak to in regards to some of the other comments you had surrounding the looking at the properties, because as I did mention, we are trying to make sure that it's a site that is going to be easily accessible while still cost effective, while also evaluating available land that is meeting the need. Some of the things that we've looked at when looking at the site size is one thing that we are going to have to deal with in a natural disaster is debris. And so one of the parts of the planning process is to make sure that we have adequate space to not only store materials, because these roads, while we're looking at them as recovery roads, it's not to say that they aren't going to have their own damage done to them in a potential significant size event, but having the materials on location to be able to then go out and address the road needs, the damage that was done, as well as having a site to be able to dispose of some of the debris that we're going to have to be dealing with during this event. But I'll let Ted McLean speak to in regards to the other questions that you have.
The point of landslides, we have Tom Horning, a local geologist that's working with us now to give us a report on the things that you're talking about with the properties. And so he's working on it now. We don't have any reports back as of yet, but we can report that back to you. As far as efficiency and site, efficient sites for circulation of materials and supplies, the site is really more central in a sense to these our rock sources, and that's the main material that we're using for roads and asphalt and oil for chip sealing roads. It is more central in that most of our rock pits are all in the Olney area. So off of Youngs River Road is one central location for a rock pit, as well as out Highway 202. And then on South County, our rock source is the Knife River source there, just out of Seaside, Cannon Beach Junction. So no matter what, and there are private rock sources off of the main line also that are owned by Greenwood. So as far as efficiency of moving materials around, those sources are fairly close in the county. We do have strategic stockpile sites where we maintain a rock source in case of emergencies and projects that we have. So we'll continue to be using those type of sites. The Crown campsite is something that maybe we'd look at in the future, but that was one of the uses for that site, is to be able to store materials and be more effective in restoring things in that area. So I don't know if that answered all your questions.
Yes, I appreciate your answers from both of you. Thank you very much.
Robert?
So
I have a question of Ted. Where along the main line is there highway quality rock quarry? I thought it was all, Classic Bridge was all low quality rock, not the kind of basalt hard rock that has needed to be highway quality.
That's true, and I'm not sure as far as the gradation of rock in those pits, but it would have to come from the quarries that I spoke about earlier. The ones that are privately owned, in the event of a disaster, we have to get to a resource, and even if it was low quality, we would have to get to that resource to be able to get things reestablished.
Is there any hard rock near the main line?
There is a pit, and I'm not sure of the quality of rock. There is a pit on the south main line itself.
Okay, I noticed in Monica's presentation today the absence of the word bypass. Has it been searched and deleted from the talking points?
Oh, so in regards to a bypass would really require the state to be involved in those conversations, because ultimately it would require state funding to find an alternate route from Highway 30 or Highway 101. Right now, what we're focusing on are potential recovery routes or evacuation routes. And so while there have been conversations in the past about a bypass, that's not what the county is looking to accomplish, because we're not looking to take over the road system for the state.
I have questions.
Okay.
So as far as moving to the sorting yard, are you planning on using Lewis and Clark as the main road to coming in and out? Or are you planning using the main line? And my question is also there is, how wide is the main line that you are proposing to build?
So the main line is an existing road. It's a gravel road. It's not, as far as regular use, if the county were to move to the sort yard, we would be using the route, like, depending on where the employees work from, depends on whether or not they'll be coming from Lewis and Clark or Fort Clatsop Road to get to the site. And then depending on where those crews are then going out to work would kind of depend on which direction they would go, whether they would take the Lewis and Clark route or take the Fort Clatsop route. In regards to the main line, again, at this point in time, it's not a road that the county is looking to immediately start construction on. One of those is because a lot of the community feedback has been a lot of concern about increased traffic in the area. So right now, what the county is focusing on is recovery routes. These roads are currently used by logging companies and they're gated off. And so one of the things that we have worked with on our county council is to find out is if it's a county road, then can we keep it gated? Because typically public roads need to be available for public access. but there are certain conditions where they can continue to be gated roads. And so at this point in time, we wouldn't be looking to immediately start developing. One, because that hasn't been the direction that the community has wanted to go, but two, because there's a significant cost associated with it. One of the other frequently asked questions is, how is the county going to be paying for this? So the county has been building up reserves. The Public Works Department has been building up reserves because they know that they need to relocate their facility. Currently, there is approximately $8 million set aside to do this project. And then in addition, once we do sell the existing Astoria location, those monies would also be able to use to help pay for the construction of a new facility. So I'm not sure if I answered your question. We wouldn't be using the main line as a regular route to head to South County at this point in time.
But there is a plan in the future for that, right? I mean, I heard that there was a plan that was possibly up to 100 feet for.
Yeah, so the purchase sale agreement does have 100 in certain areas 100-foot right of way. But I think the important part to remember about all of this is there was a plan, and we're going through the community outreach process to figure out what is the need and what is it that the community wants. So we started with a plan, and we do have a purchase sale agreement that would include right-of-way access in some areas to 100 feet, some areas to 60 feet. But that does not mean that if we are to acquire that property, that once we've acquired it, that we're immediately going to develop it into a road.
Are there any other questions? Well, I've got one from your survey. I thought it was fairly interesting that question number 6, if these alternate routes were obtained and improved, should they be open for general public access? And 2/3 of the participants said yes. And yet when you come down and list the access roads, Pipeline Road, Lewis and Clark Main Line, and Lewis and Clark Main Line South, you've got 17%, 7% and 8%. Do you gather from that people want the access, but they didn't really know what Pipeline Road was and Lewis and Clark Main Line was? Is it just that they didn't understand what was going on?
Yeah, that's the feedback, because as I mentioned, when I've presented to a couple other people or I've answered questions, whether it's been on in emails or on the phone, people didn't know where we're talking about when we talk about the main line. And you know, I apologize. I've only lived in Clatsop County for almost 20 years, but my husband grew up here, so I've come to learn those terms from him, you know, growing up in the area, and trying to figure out another term to identify these roads by, that we would be able to easily identify. So I think having learned from this questionnaire process, if we had included the map, I think it might have been a lot more helpful for people. But
yeah,
we're learning.
You nailed what I was going to say. I think a good map would have helped. I know that most of us commissioners here have been around long enough that we know what those terms are and we're conversant with them. In fact, Robert Strickland and I have been pushing on that main line as a bypass access for 40 years or more. So, yeah, it's something I think that maybe next time if we go through this again, we have a very clear map indication of what we're talking about, because there probably are a lot of newcomers to the area that don't fully understand that old terminology. But thank you it's good that we got that participation. I agree with Chris. It surprised me that we had so many people take a couple of minutes out of their day and fill out that questionnaire and send it back. So
yeah.
Good job. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think Nadia has a question.
I got a lot of negative feedback on the survey. The people that I saw online and that I talked to really were confused by it. And I don't think that it should be considered, data to rely on for the pulse of the county. Actually, the vast majority of the county did move here in the last 20 years. They're not old timers. And so most people don't know what those places are. And there was very little information on the mailing to get people to understand it. And we've been talking a lot about what I'm now going to call community participation, community involvement, because we're redoing the comp plan, and that's goal 1. And I think that COVID is teaching us a lot about better ways to be inclusive, to really involve the community in decision making, especially in planning. And so, what I did when I got it, and I'm on the planning commission, I had no freaking idea what you were talking about. And we got one presentation, I think, year and a half ago about it. And that didn't help me that much. So I went on the county website and I dug around until I found the web page so that I could better understand it before I answered it. And so, number one, just having a link for people to be able to do some background research would have been really helpful, and see those maps online. Of course, there's a lot of people who are challenged by internet in our county, so that has its limited basis. But the other thing that I think would be really great is recording this kind of a presentation and having it available on your webpage and Facebook so that people can actually see, because this kind of discussion I think is really helpful for everybody to understand versus having something on a written page or minutes. So anyway, I encourage all of the county departments to try to do better at really telling the story to our communities and telling that story and then inviting feedback so that we can get more valid statistics on who supports what and who makes what a priority. I also received a letter from neighbors challenging this. And so that's the other thing, is I think doing this kind of work up front earlier than now would have been probably something that would have improved. You have the brims against you. If you have the brims against you, you're in big trouble. So doing this kind of outreach earlier, I think could have gotten out in front of some of that neighbor opposition possibly. But it sounds to me like the public works yard makes sense as far as I can understand. The other routes, I know Bruce and others have a lot of background on that, but it's really unclear to me today that those make sense. So I'd like to know about that a little bit more, and I'm sure the community would like to know about that a little more before it really moves forward. And just on the wetland mitigation thing, so the county's been talking about wetland mitigation and trying to find a solution to the North Coast Business Park as long as I've been involved in county governance. And I'm an environmental scientist myself, so I follow it. And I feel like the county has a lot of opportunity to mitigate within your own properties, but have chosen not to. And the North Coast Business Park is not developing because of the high expense of mitigation. So, in terms of whether this project or others, it seems like there should be a solution within your county ownership to be able to improve wildlife habitat. There's huge swaths of land that you could do that on at the same time as meet some of the goals in the business park, if that's really a priority for you. Crest, of course, is the expert on that work. So I encourage you to work with them on that.
Thanks. We do regularly work with Crest, and we do continue to regularly evaluate the county-owned lands for potential wetland mitigation. So I appreciate that feedback as well.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, we thank you for your participation, and that was a good update. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's move on to the comprehensive plan update.
Okay, As we discussed last month, between January and March of this year,